Prince Warriors Volume 3 by Priscilla Shirer, Chapter 10, Training Days. The kids and adults put on their armor and carried their Kristen into the gym, breaking into groups that Mr. J.R. had assigned. Evan stood between Levi and Manuel and waved his little knife around as if trying to make it bigger. "Careful, Evan, you're going to hurt somebody," said Levi. "With this little thing? The worst I could do is butter them," said Evan sarcastically. "How do you make it bigger, Mr. J.R.? "If you'll listen, I'll tell you," said Mr. J.R. somewhat impatiently. Evan stopped waving his knife and stood quietly. "That's better. First, set your feet one in front of the other and bend your knees. Make sure you have a strong stance. To activate the sword, you need to raise the handle and press it to your breastplate, blade up. Point it slightly away from your chin so you don't slice yourself up like this," Mr. J.R. demonstrated by pressing the handle of his kris to his breastplate. As soon as it made contact, the sword grew to its full length, nearly half as tall as Mr. J.R. himself. "Whoa," said Evan. "Awesome." Levi followed the instructions, touching the handle of his knife to his breastplate. He felt a slight buzz in his palm, and the knife jolted out of his hands as the small blade grew to its full length. Evan burst out laughing. "Gotta hang on tight," said Mr. J.R., picking up the sword and handing it back to Levi. "Your turn, Evan." Evan braced himself and pulled the small knife to his chest. Instantly, the huge blade popped up, narrowly missing his chin. He threw his head back in surprise and fell over backwards, landing on his behind. He glowered at Levi, who was now snickering at him. "Not so easy, huh?" said Levi. Mr. J.R. gave Evan a hand back to his feet. "There's a reason you get in your stance first. One foot in front, one in back, to keep your balance. And remember not to point the blade directly under your chin." "Got it," said Evan. Then it was Manuel's turn. He set his legs apart as he had seen the other two boys do, gripped the handle of the kris extra tight, and touched it to his chest. Nothing happened. He tried again and again. Still nothing. "Mine's broken," he said finally. "Blade up," said Mr. J.R. He reached out and adjusted Manuel's grip. The blade extended so fast that Manuel jumped, although because he had his foot properly set, he did not fall over. "Good job," said Mr. J.R., giving him a pat on the shoulder. "You're a good listener, Manuel. Now that the sword is activated, it can be wielded. Remember what Ruach has probably already told you. The sword is an offensive weapon, but it should only be used against the enemy or a servant of the enemy. And it can only kill the inhuman kind of enemy, the unseen kind. Do you understand this?" The boys nodded eagerly. "Okay, lesson 1, said Mr. J.R. Stay calm, stay focused. Never rush in. Take time to breathe, to think. Plan your first move with care. Your first move will probably decide how the whole fight will go. You want to end the fight as soon as you can, and you want to win. Got it?" The boys nodded. "Good. Lesson 2, your stance. This is how you stand when you're ready for battle. Like we already learned, keep your knees slightly bent, 1 foot forward, 1 foot back. Never side by side. Your sword should be pointed at your opponent's head or chest at all times. Let me see you try it." The boys raised their swords, pointing the tips at Mr. J.R.'s chest. "Good. Keep your tip up at all times. Keep your elbows close to your body. Don't overextend your arm. Don't go swinging wildly. You are looking for quick, targeted thrusts and cuts. Now, I know you've all watched a lot of sword fighting movies, but those are mostly not very true to life. The actors are usually aiming for each other's swords, but in real life, you don't aim for your opponent's sword. You aim for your opponent. Every move you make is designed to kill. If you parry, which means block your opponent's attack, you should always turn it into a counter-strike. But forgers don't fight with swords, said Evan. That's right, said Mr. J.R. But there are other servants of Pony Roast that do. We're going to cover the basics first, then we'll talk about the forgers. Mr. J.R. began with parries, showing the boys how to block a sword attack. Then he had the boys practice for a while, attacking them in slow motion until they learned to react correctly and have their swords in the proper position. Above your head, Manuel. If you hold your blade in front of your face, you're going to get it right up your nose. Evan snickered at this. The instruction went on for more than an hour. Brianna and Ivy practiced their new moves against Grandpa Tony, taking turns attacking him until he begged for mercy. Rook had Xavier and Finn spar with each other, stopping them often to correct their positions. Then Mr. J.R. had all the kids sit on the bleachers while he and Rook did a demonstration of sword fighting techniques, both in slow motion and real time. Levi was amazed at how fast they were and how quickly they were able to react to the other person's attack. He vowed to practice every day, so one day he could be as good a swordsman as his dad. Once the demonstration was over, Mr. J.R. called for a break. The kids filed tiredly into the main room and took turns at the water fountain. Then they sat around a table and ate cookies provided by Brianna's grandmother, while Mr. J.R., Grandpa Tony, and Rook went into the office for a discussion. At this rate, it'll take months before we get good at this, said Ivy. There's so much to learn, more than I thought. It's kind of fun, Brianna added, although I never thought I would be able to use a real sword or be in a real battle. I'm not very good, Manuel said. No hand-eye coordination, and my depth perception is very poor. I'll help you out if you need it, don't worry, said Evan, not knowing for certain what depth perception was. He patted Manuel on the shoulder as Mr. J.R. had done. Sure you will, Squirt, said Xavier with a laugh. Evan made a face at him. Hey, Manuel, Evan said, ignoring his brother. How come your dad isn't here helping? What do you mean? Asked Manuel. Well, he's a Prince Warrior, isn't he? I mean, he was. He has a book. He does? Manuel looked mystified. Sure, I saw it on his desk that time we went to your house to see the shield you made. He was snooping, said Xavier. Was not. The door was open, and I saw the book, but it looked kind of different. The crest was all changed. I didn't get a chance to look at the rest of the pages. I didn't know my father had a book, said Manuel thoughtfully. He never mentioned it. I got my book from my mom before she died. Maybe we can go over to your house after this and look at it, said Evan. Evan, said Xavier, it is none of your business. I just want to see, Evan said. My father doesn't like anyone going into a study, said Manuel, including me. He's been rather reclusive lately. Is that a sickness? No, it means withdrawn, secretive. He keeps to himself. Oh, right, since your mom... Evan, Xavier hissed. Sorry, Evan said, tucking his head into his shoulders. It's okay. It's true, though, said Manuel with a sigh. He doesn't like to talk about it. Mr. J.R. emerged from the office with Rook and Grandpa Tony. All right, kids, break is over. Back to work. Mr. Blake picked up Xavier, Evan, and Manuel after practice was over, just as the rec was opening for the day. Mr. J.R. had given them each a wooden sword to practice with at home. The boys talked excitedly about what they had learned, recounting their favorite moments. I liked when Mr. J.R. almost slopped Manuel's ear off, said Evan, laughing. I kept closing my eyes, said Manuel. Probably not the best thing to do in a sword fight. No matter what I did, Rook always managed to knock the sword out of my hand, said Xavier. He was so fast I couldn't keep up. Hey, Manuel, you want to come over to our house and practice? Asked Evan. No thanks, said Manuel, shaking his head. I have homework. Homework? It's Thanksgiving vacation. Manuel tried to think of some other more plausible excuse, but then just shrugged. My father wants me home. Mr. Blake pulled into Manuel's driveway. Thanks for the ride, Manuel said as he got out of the car. No problem. Say hi to your father for us, said Mr. Blake. He's home, right? Yep, that's his car, Manuel said, indicating the car in the driveway. I appreciate the ride home. Tell Mrs. Blake I said hello. Will do, Manuel, said Mr. Blake with a smile. You sure you're okay? I'm fine, thank you. Manuel waited until the Blake's car had backed out of the driveway and turned down their own driveway before going into the house. He opened the door, listening for sounds of his father. The door to the study was closed. Papa! He waited, but there was no immediate answer. He started to go up the stairs into his room, but then changed his mind. He walked over to the study door and knocked softly. Papa, are you there? No answer. He knocked harder, but still nothing. Manuel paused. He knew he shouldn't go in, but he had to see for sure. He took a deep breath and turned the knob of the door. He opened it slowly, peeking in, wondering if his dad had fallen asleep in his wing chair, but he wasn't in the room at all. Maybe he had gone to fill the bird feeders. Mr. Santos loved to watch the birds and document any new bird he saw. It was practically the only activity he enjoyed anymore. He was always working. Manuel slid into the room and looked around. There it was sitting on his father's desk, just as Evan had said. A Prince Warrior book. Evan was right. Manuel crept over to the desk and peered at the book, pushing his glasses up his nose. It did look different. The symbol of a Horatoss appeared to be upside down. Manuel opened the book and looked through the pages. The changes were small. A chapter heading rearranged, a sentence crossed out or rewritten, a note scribbled in the margin. The pictures were missing small details. The shield illustration contained no red seed in the center of the brass boss, and the picture of the sword did not have the crest of a Horatoss in the hilt, nor was there any letters engraved in the blade. When Manuel touched the blade, his finger did not go through the page as it did with his own book. He realized that the Kriss could not be implanted in this book. It was powerless. Manuel heard the back door slam and darted out of the study in time to see his father tramping through the kitchen, pulling off his thick cardigan. Oh, hi, Papa, Manuel said, brightly, hoping his nervous state wasn't too noticeable. Manuel, did you just get home? Yes, Mr. Blake dropped me off. Oh, I did not hear a car pull away. Mr. Santos dropped his sweater on the back of a chair and passed by Manuel, giving him a rub on the head as he headed to his study. Manuel touched his head absently, feeling warmed by his father's unexpected show of affection. Did you go to fill the bird feeders? Manuel asked, following him down the hallway. He wondered to himself, did I shut the book or leave it open? He couldn't remember. Yes. Any new birds today? No, but the hummingbirds are returning. Hummingbirds were Mr. Santos' favorite. Where did you go this morning? Just with my friends over to the rec. It is open so early. Well, no, we were helping Mr. J.R. with a project. Manuel didn't want to lie, but he didn't want to tell his father what they were actually doing either. You're going to your cousin's for dinner, Mr. Santos said. Be ready to leave at 5. He turned the knob of his study door and opened it. Papa, Manuel said, can I ask you something? Mr. Santos stopped in the doorway, gazing at his son abstractedly. Yes? Manuel bit his lower lip. He wasn't sure how to ask. You know the book Mama gave me? The one about the Prince Warrior? Mr. Santos stiffened. Yes, I know this book. I was just wondering if you had ever read it. There was a long pause. Mr. Santos shook his head. It is a nonsensical book for children. You are too old for such things, Manuel. It was a nice memento from your mother, a way to remember her. She was special, but do not take such things so seriously. With that, Mr. Santos disappeared through the door and shut it with a click.